Here's how I built my own AI agent Quant for profitable crypto trading. This is how it works. You can type in the ticker of any major crypto, so I'll do Ethereum, and wait for the workflow to execute. Our agent provides us with a detailed analysis on ETH for either spot recommendations or for leverage recommendations if you want to be a bit more riskier. So starting from the top under spot, we can see that this is broken out between short-term and long-term. So under short-term, our quant is recommending us to hold our ETH and an entry price between 21.85 to 21.95 if we're looking to buy dips. They also give a stop loss level of 21.70 so that if we go below this level, we should automatically sell. And they also give take profit levels when we do make money. And then all of these are based on three main rationales within the agent. So the first is primary signals, and these are based on just direct price action. So we have things like trend lines, support, and resistance levels. We can see that from the analysis, the resistance is forming around 22.20, and we have some indecisive price action as well. Then below this, I also added in secondary indicators. So these are the lagging indicators you typically see with MACD, RSI, and OBV. So these aren't as important as direct price action, but these also help in guiding the agent to give a more detailed analysis for us. And then finally, for the last rationale, we have a sentiment analysis, and this actually takes in all crypto news articles from the past 3 days and forms a sentiment on whether the short term or long term is bullish or bearish. So right now we can see that based on news articles from the past 3 days, the short term sentiment is negative. And then we have the same exact thing for the long term. This is just on a longer time frame. So now we can see that we have take profit levels of 2,500, 2,700, and even up to 3,000. And below this, we have leverage recommendations. So they'll tell you positions to take as well as the amount of leverage you should use. So right now it's suggesting for us to open up a 3x long on ETH with an entry price of around 21.95 and a stop loss at 21.70. Now this is all for the short term. We have the exact same positions, but for the long term. As you can see here, I made this entire AI agent using n8n, which is a no-code, low-code builder. So I'll be going over in the next sections first how I built this at a high level. So I'll explain all the nodes, and then I'll actually build it from scratch so that you can customize it to your own liking. And before we continue, if you are interested in joining a community of AI builders, then make sure to check out our website at aicodepathways.com. We help complete beginners build complex apps with AI, as well as AI agents to use either for themselves or for their business. So make sure to check out our website in the description if you do want to join a top AI building community. Before going over the n8n workflow, let me conceptually show you how this agent is actually calculating its analysis and trades. The analysis is made up of three components. We have the primary analysis, the lagging indicators, and the sentiment analysis. Now going from the top to the bottom, we actually start with live market data that we feed to the agent. So these are hundreds of different candlestick data, and from there we can determine the primary analysis and the lagging indicators of all of this live market data. Then after this, we grab a ton of different news articles that are all crypto and market focused. We run those news articles through a sentiment analysis node, and then from there we can combine the primary analysis, lagging indicators, and the sentiment analysis to form one final analysis. Now the reason why we don't just provide an image chart is because the raw live market data can provide a more complete view into trading volume and prices over hundreds of different data points. Plus, by providing the entire raw market data, the LLM can determine its own signals and parse through the data on its own accord. I personally found that image analysis of charts were a lot more flawed in terms of just giving an accurate response. The reason why we don't just provide these standard technical analysis indicators like MACD or RSI that most people reference is because they're all lagging. And this means that they confirm price actions and patterns after they occur. If you only wanted to use these technical analysis indicators, you can literally just feed it to ChatGPT. You don't even need an agent for this. But we want our quant, obviously, to be more intelligent, forward-looking, and be able to actually predict trends. And this is where the raw market data comes in. Now let's go over how I built this workflow at a high level. We start with the trigger, obviously, that sets up our entire workflow. In our case, it's based on a Telegram message, but obviously you can change this to whatever you want. If you're using Slack or if you want to email or use any other third-party application, you can set the trigger up to be that specific node. And then following this, the next step in our workflow is converting whatever we type inside Telegram into a specific format using a code node. Now this is because we're using the Binance API in the next steps, and it requires the ticker to first of all be in all caps, and it also requires the trading pair attached. So what this means is that if we type in BTC into Telegram, this code node will reformat it to say BTC USDT. So BTC in all caps and then USDT because that's the most common trading pair with Bitcoin. And just to show you visually, this is what the code looks like. And if you're unfamiliar with coding, that's completely okay. I'll show you how to generate this code completely using AI when we build this from scratch. It's honestly just as easy as dropping n8n nodes into your workflow. So you can see we're first getting the input. We're making it all uppercase, we're adding USDT as the trading pair, and then we're outputting this result so that whenever we type in BTC, it'll output BTC USDT in all caps. Now, once we have this cleaned up ticker, we can send 3 separate HTTP requests to get candlestick data for the ticker. So for example, if this is Bitcoin, we'll get 3 different HTTP requests to get 15-minute, 1 hour, and 1 day candles for Bitcoin. Now, the reason why we want to have 3 separate is because we want a comprehensive view of the coin we're looking at. So the 15-minute gives us insight into 15-minute candles and prices for short-term analysis. The 1 hour is more so for medium-term analysis, and the 1 day is for long-term analysis. And within each of these HTTP requests, we're currently getting 200 items. So if we were to double click here, we can see that we want 200 separate 15-minute candles, the same for 1 hour candles and 1 day candles. So what this means is that every single time we run this workflow, we'll get live candle data for the past 215 minutes, for the past 200 hours, and then for the past 200 days. So this gives us a comprehensive view of how the live chart looks like from raw data. And then the next step is just to get this JSON output and label the data. So right now, if we click into the 15-minute candle request and then we test the step for Bitcoin, all it does is give us a ton of data that's not labeled. So what we want to do in the next step is take all 200 of these items and then attach 15 minutes to all of them so that we know these are all 15-minute candle data points. So right now, if we test the 15-minute candle data, we can see that it adds 15-minute candles to every single one of these timeframes. So we know that these are all 15-minute candles. This makes it a lot easier to organize once we do this for every single different type of candle and merge them into one combined JSON output. So testing this data, we can see that after we get the 15-minute, 1 hour, and 1 day candles, it'll merge them into one JSON output. And inside this output, we can see that they're all labeled with different time frames. So these are all 15-minute candles. If we scroll down a bit inside the JSON file, we can see that these are all 1 hour candles. And then scrolling down a bit more, we will see the 1 day candles as well. Right here. So that's what this step is doing. It's essentially labeling all the data for us before we merge it into one file. And now, like I mentioned, this is all just one part of the analysis. The agent also needs to factor in the current market sentiment. And this is where we have our 4th HTTP request. So after we receive all of this candlestick data, we'll then head over and then request some crypto news articles. So if we double click into the request, we can see that all we want is crypto or Bitcoin or CoinDesk articles. And on the right-hand side, we can see that we have 2,000 different articles that we have to reference. Following this, we just want to filter out the news articles just so there's less data. We don't need things like authors, URLs, image URLs, when it was published, or the content. So all I have is title and description of the articles. This makes it easier in the next step to run a sentiment analysis. And from the sentiment analysis, we can see that they're taking all the articles we published and it's writing out whether the short-term sentiment is either negative, positive, or neutral, and a rationale for it, as well as long-term sentiment. And then now with this, we can take all of our combined data, merge them all into, once again, one JSON output. And as you can see, this is what the final data looks like. We have all of our candles with the different time frames. So these are all our 15-minute candles. If we scroll down a bit more, we have all of our 1 hour candles. And then if we scroll down a bit more, we can see that we have all of our 1 day candles here. And then at the end of all of this is our sentiment analysis, which once again was created inside the sentiment analysis node. And this just gives us short-term sentiment, whether it's negative, positive, or neutral, and then the rationale. And then the long-term sentiment, once again, negative, positive, neutral, and the rationale. And then it takes all of this inside one singular JSON output, feeds it to our AI agent, which then uses the Google Gemini chat model to produce our analysis. And then I've just written out a custom prompt to spit out all the information we need. So if I were to expand this, we can see that we have the combined market data with technical data and sentiment analysis, saying that it's a JSON array. Scrolling down, we want, first of all, the agent to group the candlestick objects, and then we want them to analyze the data in detail with the short-term analysis, long-term analysis, and then trading recommendations below. And then finally, Telegram has a 4,000 character limit. So what I want to do is split the Telegram message into 2 separate messages and then send them over to our Telegram channel. Now, the first thing we'll want to do is add a trigger. In our case, we'll do Telegram. So we'll just simply type in Telegram, and we'll want this whenever we send a message to the bot, we'll do on message. And I already have my Telegram account set up, but if you don't, simply click docs and follow the instructions there. They're pretty detailed and easy to follow along. And then after this, we can test the step to make sure it works. So I'll open up Telegram and we'll type in test. We can see that the test message did update with the text call test. Now, like I mentioned, next what we want to do is format our Telegram message to be something appropriate for the Binance API. So we can type in code and then add a code node to run some custom code. Okay, so I just typed in BTC into our Telegram trigger. So we can see that what we want to convert is the text field called BTC. You can see that the text field is nested within this message. So message text, this is exactly what we want to reference when we generate this new code. Now, again, you don't need to code at all here. What you can do is simply ask ChatGPT. So I'll head over into chatgpt.com And then inside ChatGPT, all I did was type in, please write JavaScript code for my n8n code node that takes an input. Remember, again, it's nested within message, so it's message.text. If we look here, it's called text, the field, but it's nested within message. That's why we're doing json.message.text. Make sure it trims the white space and then converts it to all uppercase. And then what we want to do is add USDT to form the complete trading pair symbol. So like I mentioned, this is the proper format for Binance to recognize our HTTP request. And then we just want to output the results as JSON. So we can see to create an n8n code node, they'll provide us with the code, and it's as simple as just copying over this. And again, we don't even need a reasoning model. I'm on ChatGPT 4.5, but you can do something like 4.0. This is a fairly simple request. If we head back into our workflow, copy over the code, test the step, this should take the text, BTC, and then first make it all uppercase, remove white space, and then add USDT to it. And if you do want to know what's going on in the code, they've added explanations above every single line. So it first retrieves the input text. So this is JSON message text, which is this BTC. It first checks if it's a string. This isn't really needed, but they did it. Next, they want to trim the white space and convert it to uppercase. So what we want to do is trim, convert to uppercase, and then adds the word USDT to form the trading pair symbol. So it takes our trim text and just adds USDT. And then it outputs the result as a JSON object. And this is what we see here, which is just BTC USDT. Now, next, what we want to do is an HTTP request to get candlestick data. So we can just add one here, HTTP request. And we can simply just use the Binance API because it's free. So the method is get because we want to get data. Now you can find this exact URL inside the documentation or Ask AI, but I've just copied and pasted it here to be a bit more simple. So it's api.binance.com/API/VT/klines. And then for the symbol, we want this to be the symbol we type in. So in our case, it's BTC USDT. And the interval, like I mentioned, we want 3 different intervals. We want 15 minutes, 1 hour, 1 day. So the first is 15 minutes. And we want the limit of 200. So this is a set of a limit of 200. We can set this to be 100 all the way up to 1000. So right now, if we test this step, it should take BTC USDT and provide us with 200 different items. And this is formatted all inside the candlestick data. So if you want to look at this, this is how it reads. We have the open time, open, high, low, close, and volume. So this is what these all mean. Now, next, what we want to do is actually remove this BTC because we want this to be dependent on what we type in the Telegram message before. So what we can do is make this variable instead of hard coded. So rather than having this just read BTC USDT every single time, let's delete this and then make this into an expression. So if we exit out of here, let's click expression, go to our schema, and then literally drag in the trading pair symbol. This way, the symbol will always change based on what we type in the previous node. So right now, these are all the open, high, low, close prices for Bitcoin, but let's test this out with a different type of crypto. So heading back to our Telegram trigger, let's first test this, and then I'll type in ETH, press enter. We can see it's executing. So inside the code node, it first changes ETH to ETH USDT. And then for the HTTP request, this should now all be ETH prices. Perfect. Because now we can see it's outputting ETH and this symbol is changed to ETH USDT. Now, like I mentioned, these are just the 15-minute candles. So let's rename this so we know what this is. This will be HTTP 15 minutes. And now let's copy and paste this 2 more times for the 1 hour and 1 day candles. So now that we have the 1 hour and 1 day, let's connect this code node to both of these. And then what we want to do is adjust this URL. So rather than having this be 15-minute intervals, we now want to set this to be 1 hour intervals. And once again, we can change the limit if we want. So if you want to pass over the past 1000 hours, we would change this 200 to 1000. And then finally in the 1 day, just double click and then change the interval to 1 day instead of 15 minutes. So now testing this out, we can see that we have 15-minute candles, 1 hour candles, and 1 day candles, and they all output 200 items. So these are the milliseconds, and each millisecond is 1 hour apart for the 1 hour candles, and these are all 1 day apart. Nowhere inside this JSON output does it say 1 day candles anywhere, so that's what we need to do in the next step, label all the data. So next what we want to do is just simply add a node for edit fields because we want to edit all this data, all 200 items. So type in edit. We can do edit fields set. And we're working with JSON, so we can just set the mode to be JSON. And then all we want to do is just append 15 minutes to each of these data points. So what we can do is set a JSON expression. All we're doing is doing time frame 15 minutes and then adding all of these candles. So you can copy this exactly and we can see that every single candle now says 15 minutes and they do this for all 200 items. So we should have 15 minutes labeled for every single item 200 times. Next, let's exit out and do the same exact thing for the 1 hour and 1 day. So for the 1 hour, set this to be JSON once again. We'll set this to be an expression and we just want to add in the 1 hour time frame. We'll do 1 hour, test the step. And we can see that every single candle now has 1 hour attached to it. So we know that these are all 1 hour candles. And then once again for 1 day, again, we'll edit fields, set the mode to JSON. delete this, set this as an expression, and we want this to be 1 day candles. If we test the step, every single one should now say 1 day. And again, this is just labeling the data so that the AI agent, once we feed all this data, knows that these are 1 hour, 1 day, or 15-minute candles. And then next, what we want to do is aggregate all this data to make it easier for the AI agent to receive and understand, so we can combine all of these 200 items into one single JSON output. So what we do is add a merge node. So just type in merge, and then make sure the mode is set to append. We don't want to combine and merge any matching items together. We want this to be one after the other. So we'll first show all the 15-minute candles, and then all the 1 hour candles, and then all the 1 day candles. So select append, and because we have 3 inputs, we'll select the number of inputs to be 3. And then next, all we do is connect the inputs. So first input to the first field, second to second, and third to third. So now let's test our workflow from the start. We'll do test, and then I'll just type in ETH once again. This should trigger. This should send a 15-minute, 1 hour, 1 day candles, 200 items for each. So now this merge has 600 items. So because we did append, it starts off with all the 15-minute candles. If we scroll down somewhere to like at the middle, we have all the 1 hour candles, and then scrolling all the way down, we have the 1 day candles. Next, what we want to do is combine all of these 600 items into one single JSON output that makes it easier for the AI agent to kind of digest and understand. So once again, we'll add another code node. So from here, just type in code, and then we can run custom JavaScript or Python code. So inside this code node, once again, we can go to ChatGPT. I've typed in the prompt. I'm working in an n8n workflow and have 600 candle items from merge node. So what that means is we have 600 items from this merge node. And then what we want to do is combine them into one single output. So I'll say each item's JSON already represents a single candle. I want you to combine them into one output item with a property called all candles. It's an array containing all 600 candles. Once again, it's simple. All you want to do is just copy over the code, paste it into your code node here, and then test this step. And it should take this JSON and then combine it all into one item. So right now it's 600 items, each item representing their own candle. And then now we have one singular JSON output. But as you can see, all the data remains the same. We have all our 15-minute candles here. Scrolling down, 1 hour candles. And then scrolling down, we have the 1 day candles. Now just taking a step back, this is our current workflow. We have a Telegram trigger code, and then we have 3 different HTTP requests. So 600 items total. We're merging those into one singular JSON output and then combining those 600 items into one singular item. So let's go ahead and just rename this code node to be combined JSON data. Now that we have all our candlestick data done, what we want to do is add in a 4th HTTP request for our sentiment analysis. So like I mentioned, we want to get relevant news articles and then run it through an AI node. So just head over to newsapi.org and you can get your own API key after you sign up for an account. Then now heading back into our workflow, let's go ahead and add in our 4th HTTP request. So once again, just type in HTTP request. Perfect. And then method, we want to get data once again. And for our URL, let's go ahead and just type in newsapi.org/v2/everything. So again, this is the URL to call on the news API. And once again, you have to make an account and get your own API key. But from here, what you want to do is first send query parameters. And these are the parameters in which we can search for articles and also include our API key. So the first parameter we want to include is titles. So we'll call this Q. And we want this to be all news articles or titles that contains the word crypto or Bitcoin or CoinDesk. The reason for this is because we want all crypto related articles, Bitcoin related articles, and then CoinDesk is one of the largest crypto news networks. So we want all articles by them as well. Now this news API aggregates all news articles. So if you were to just run this query parameter, it would literally come up with millions of different crypto articles. So what we want to do is add a time parameter so that it's only recent articles. So what we can do is call the next one from, and what we want is all articles within the past 3 days. Now, obviously you can change this to whatever you want, but in my case, I'll just set in an expression for today's date minus 3 days. So all you can do is go ahead and copy and paste this function that I wrote, but it's basically the date now minus 3 days. So right now, if today's March 7th, 2025, this would be March 4th, 2025. And what this means is that it's taking all of the news articles about crypto or Bitcoin or CoinDesk from March 4th, 2025 up till today, which is March 7th, 2025. Next, we can sort these by popular. So once again, add another parameter. And what this does is bring the most credible articles to the front so that they're factored more heavily inside the sentiment analysis. So we call this next one sort by. And then for the value, we'll just call this property or popularity. And then lastly, what we want to do is insert our API key. So type in API key and then type in your own API keys value. So you want to make sure that this HTTP request is wired up. So what we can do is just connect this to the code node. so that it's going over all 4 of our HTTP requests. Now, the way this workflow works is that it'll first execute these before it moves on to this 4th HTTP request. So I'll show you what this looks like after we run this once again. But for now, let's go ahead and test this to make sure that this is working. So if we were to test this step, great. So we have 1,265 articles and they all have to deal with crypto. So we can see the first one, Trump agencies drop dozens of Biden era cases against crypto. See Trump admin, Trump tariffs, trade war. This is all market, crypto, and Bitcoin related. Now, next, what we want to do is filter out this data. If you can see, we have things like author, URL, URL image, publish that. These are all points of data that we do not need. And if we have 1,000 results of this, this is literally just increasing our output to the AI agent for no reason. And obviously this is important just in terms of context. So what we can do is just delete essentially every single field except for the title and description, since these contain all of the content about what the article is about. So once again, we can add a code node. So exit out of here, we'll add one item. We'll call this code. And then what this will do is essentially filter out the news articles. So we can rename this to be filter news articles. Now, again, these aren't complex lines of JavaScript code. So once again, you can head over to ChatGPT or your AI chatbot of choice. Ask them that you want to filter out your articles to only include certain fields. So in our case here, I'll just paste this in. We have a new one called filtered articles, and it only includes title and description. So right here, we can see that we have author, title, description, URL, URL image, publish that, content. And then now if we test this step, we can see it only returns title and description. Make sure it works. Filter articles, title, description, title, description, title, description. So you can feel free to copy my code, or if you want to generate custom one, just simply ask AI. Again, these aren't complex lines of code, so pretty much everything will work. Now, next, what we want to do is actually run a sentiment analysis based on all these filtered news articles. Now, the reason why we want to run this analysis separate from our further analysis later on with an AI agent node is because we want our data to kind of be broken down. So we want one essential AI agent node to focus only on a sentiment analysis on articles, and the next one to take the output of what we received here, which is the sentiment analysis, so that it has an easier time to essentially combine all this candlestick data with an already finished sentiment analysis. So let me show you what I mean. What we can do here is add in an AI agent node. Now I'll just add in OpenAI since I like using OpenAI generally for things like this. But if you want to use a different one, you can select basic LLM chain. But in our case, we'll just do message a model for OpenAI. Now just connect your account. If you haven't done so already, resource will be text, message a model. And because this isn't too complex, we're just taking literally hundreds of articles and asking them to run a sentiment analysis on all of these. We don't need a complex model. We can just do 4.0 mini. And then what we want to do is add in a system message to set the model's behavior. We also want to output the content as JSON. And then for the text, once again, you can have AI generate things for you, but in my case, I'll just type this in and feel free to copy it. It just says you're a highly intelligent and accurate sentiment analyzer. We have short-term sentiment and long-term sentiment. So I'll pause it here and then stop here as well for the long-term sentiment section. And then this just gives an example of what the output should look like. So we have a short-term sentiment, category, score, rationale, long-term sentiment, category, score, and rationale. Now let's go ahead and test this step. So we're inputting all of these different news articles, and the output should now be 2 different sentiment analyses for short-term and long-term. Great. So we have short-term sentiment, negative 0.6. We have the rationale, and then long-term sentiment is neutral. And we can see that the rationale is including all the articles that we fed it. So we can see that key events include Trump's proposal for a strategic crypto reserve. We also see fears of rising tariffs and a potential trade war, which once again are all recent articles that just occurred. And the long-term sentiments, once again, has the same exact information, but on a longer scale. So now looking at this in aggregate, what we have is all the candlestick data merged into one single JSON output. And then what we have is all the filtered news articles. And what we're doing is running a sentiment analysis through an OpenAI message model and receiving one item as well. Then just so we're organized, let me just rename this to be sentiment analysis. And then just as a quick aside, let me delete this line. What you don't want to do is just use the built-in sentiment analysis that n8n gives you, because this isn't that detailed and it has a very strict system prompt so that you won't be able to get actual text explanations as to what is the rationale behind the figures. So this node will give you scores as well as categories, whether it's positive, negative, or neutral, but they can't actually display text for you in any meaningful way. So that's why I just like to bypass this entire sentiment analysis node and just make our own through a message model, in our case, OpenAI. Now we should have one item from here and one item from here, but let me just run the workflow once again, just so you see that this is one item at the end and one item here. Okay, so now that we both have one item, what we need to do is merge the data. So it'll be merged into two items, and then once again, combine that into one single item. So once again, add in the same exact merge node. So what we want to do is append, this time with two inputs, because we want to append the combined JSON data, which is all the candlestick data, with our newly created sentiment analysis. So with this, there's two inputs, and the merge should now create two separate items. Now let's go ahead and test this step. And we can see that it creates a JSON output with two items. The first item is all the candles starting from 15 minutes. If we scroll down, we have the 1 hour candles up here. And then we scroll down a bit more. We have the 1 day candles shown here. And then if we scroll down all the way at the end, it should have our sentiment analysis. So again, we're not passing all of the news articles to our AI agent at the end. All we want to do is pass over the sentiment analysis that was already calculated, just so we don't need to do like 20 different calculations all at once. So with this, the AI agent essentially doesn't calculate anything. They just read what the rationale is, and they know whether the short-term sentiment is negative or positive, and whether the long-term sentiment is negative, positive, or neutral. So exiting out of our merge node, once again, we only want to send one item to the AI agent at the end. So what we can do is once again, combine all the JSON data. So add in a code node. It might seem redundant, but it is necessary. So go ahead and rename this to combine JSON data once again. Ask ChatGPT, but it's a pretty simple JavaScript code. All we want to do is initialize all candles, content data, scroll down, and then it returns a single item with both candlestick data and content. Now let's go ahead and test this step. And as you can see from the merge, we have two items, and now we have one single item, which once again starts with all the candles. So we have 15-minute candles. Scrolling down, just to check once again, we have 1 hour candles in the middle, and then scrolling down, we have 1 day candles near the end. So 200 15-minute candles, 200 1 hour, 200 1 day. And then at the end of all of this is our sentiment analysis. Now this is nicely formatted so that we can finally send this one single item to our AI agent node. So let's now click add another node, advanced AI, and we'll do AI agent. Now this AI agent node here is where all the magic happens. We can finally take all the data we aggregated from this JSON output and then actually get something meaningful out of the agent. All right, so the first thing we need for the agent is a brain. And because this is a ton of data that's coming in, we should choose a more powerful model. So if you do have credits to spare, I would maybe do something like ChatGPT 01 or 03, but I like using Gemini because it's free. So selecting Gemini here, what you want to do is first sign up for your account. And then I usually do 2.0 Flash. And then next, what we need to do is carefully craft the prompt for this AI agent so that they understand all the information that's coming in. And because we're having the agent just analyze all the data, we don't actually need any tools. We can just select the conversational agent since they're talking back and forth to us. Next, for the source for prompt, we want to enter in our own prompt. So we'll select define below. Now this is the custom prompt that I made, but feel free to copy this prompt exactly or tailor it to your own liking. But going over this, what I first do is say, here's the combined market data for, and then whatever we typed in for the trading pair symbol. So this is referencing our Bitcoin USDT. All I do is drag this over so that we now have Bitcoin USDT here on the right-hand side. And this right-hand side is what the agent sees. So right now we're referencing some data points inside our previous nodes. So right now it sees that here's combined market data for, and then because we typed in Bitcoin in the trigger, it'll see Bitcoin USDT. And then below this, I provided all the technical data and sentiment analysis. So if you recall earlier, when we combined the JSON data, we have two sections, all the candlestick candles, as well as all the content from the sentiment analysis. So all I did was drag this over, and we can see that on the right-hand side for the output, this is what the agent sees. They see all the technical data. And then below all of this, we have the sentiment analysis. So this shows short-term as well as long-term sentiment. So this just makes sure that the agent is actually referencing the correct data points inside our previous nodes. And then below this, I'm just typing in some general context for the agent. This is so they know how to read the time frame candlestick data. And this is so they know how to read the sentiment data as well. And then below this, we have the actual instructions for the agent. So we want them to first group the candlestick data into either short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Then we want them to analyze the data in detail for short-term, and then do the same for long-term analysis. And then after they've computed all the analysis in the backend, we want them to generate trading recommendations for both spot trading, which we saw in the beginning of the video, as well as for leverage trading below. So obviously we have things like position, leverage, entry price, stop loss, and take profit levels. Finally, below all this, we want the output format. So we want to make sure this is formatted properly for Telegram. So I'm adding things like bolding, line breaks, and then also adding in the date. So Bitcoin analysis for today's date. And then below all of this, I provided an actual example of what the output should look like. And the same for leverage recommendations. So now exiting out of this massive prompt, let's go ahead and test this step. And awesome, we have the output now. So it has the Bitcoin analysis for March 7th, 2025. And we have all this markdown formatting because again, we want to make sure it's fine for Telegram. So this might be a little bit hard to read inside this output window, but as you can see, we have spot recommendations, Below this, we have all of the different types of actions, entries, stop loss, take profit, and rationales. We have the same for long-term as well as leverage trading below. Now, all we need to do is take the output from this agent, split it into 2 different messages, because again, this is way too long to send in one single Telegram message. So to split the message into 2, it's super simple. What we want to do is just add a code node, and then you can either copy and paste my format exactly, or you can just have ChatGPT spin something up for you. Again, this is super simple JavaScript code. And now it splits it into 2 different messages. This way we can output both of this content into Telegram. So now finally, as our last step, let's go ahead and send this all to Telegram. So we'll select Telegram, and then we'll scroll down and select send a text message. We'll keep these 3 all the same. And for the chat ID, we want to reference the initial chat ID all the way at the beginning of our workflow. So what we can do is double type into this, scroll all the way down to our initial Telegram trigger. And then what we want is this chat ID, so just simply copy and paste it in. And then the last thing you need to do is rather than item, you have to type in first. So this just returns the first output from an index, and you get the result, which is 7596, which is the same exact chat ID. And then next for the text, what we want to do is directly output the contents from our last node. And then lastly, what you want to do is make sure that this parse mode is set to HTML. This just copies over all the formatting that we have from the previous steps so that we bold and have proper line breaks. And then what we can do now is test the step. And awesome. So now it's sent over 2 items to Telegram. So we have the first half of the message here. We have what appears to be all of our formatting, and then the second half of the message below it here. So just to show you that this works, this is Bitcoin analysis for March 7th at 10:17 p.m. We have the same exact thing here, 10:17 p.m. We have the spot recommendations, short term, all of the rationales, long term, all the rationales, leverage recommendations as well for short term and long term. And we can see how it's split into 2 messages so that we're able to pass over all this information to Telegram. Now, like I mentioned, if you do want to join a top AI building community where we take beginners and help them build either complex apps with AI or AI agents for their business, then make sure to check out aicodepathways.com. We have the most in-depth program to help beginners learn top AI skills and build literally anything with AI. And if you found this video helpful, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos around building AI agents.